So as you guys know, this is Family Sunday, so we tend to do things a little bit differently on these Sundays. We get to pray and worship through the sound of kids playing in the background more often, because church is a place for our whole family, right? Church is a place for people of all different ages to be the church together, right? Like, the grown-ups aren't the church. We're all the church. And so it's great to be able to gather together with everyone in the church. And we normally bring one of our traditions and habits that we do either in kids' church or in youth group, and we bring it to church. And so one of those habits is every week we talk about highs and lows. Kids' church, we normally call them by different things. What should the highs and lows be called this week? Can we think of anything? What should be called this week? We normally rename them as a good thing and a bad thing. What do you think? Yeah? What do you think, Kate? What's in butterflies? Slugs and butterflies. So clearly the slug is the good thing and the butterfly is the bad thing, right? Okay, slugs and butterflies. So maybe this feels weird to you at church because church is normally the place where you can like come and sit in a chair and you can have pleasant conversation with a couple of people next to you but not have to share anything with a larger group. Well, you came to the wrong place today. So we're just going to take a minute and share, a couple of us, if you have something that's like sitting with you of our low and our high, our slug and our butterfly. So let's start with our slug. Does anyone have a slug from this past week? A thing that like, just didn't turn out like you wanted it to? Something that happened in your week that just wasn't great? Yeah? Oh, you have to share it. No? Not feeling it? Anyone else? Is this weird? Is this a weird thing to share in church? This should be the least weird place to share that. What you got? Taxes. Yeah, I got that notification too, and I was like, oh, there goes hours of my life. All of the kids really understood that low. Anyone else? What was it? What's the slug from this past week? Yeah. Yeah, that's hard. Sometimes our low is something that's kind of funny, or sometimes our low is something that was a real low. And we as friends and as family can share those things together and bear those together. And also have a slug or a low from this past week that just wasn't what you wanted it to be? Expensive repairs, yeah?
Social Security Administration can't get their act together.
That's hard, I'm sorry. Yeah. Her sports team lost. Technically they tied, but okay. Yeah. Very underwhelming escape room. Yeah, that's real. All right, let's transition to high, your butterfly. What was like something about this past week that was the best for you? Yeah. Yeah.
Yesterday afternoon, my daughter had a baby,
Best thing about highs and lows is you don't need to compete. Your best thing doesn't need to be as good as their best thing. Yeah. Okay, awesome. I said you didn't have to compete, but I like how you tried. That's awesome. Yeah.
Next mother greeted us at the door without a cane or anything.
That's awesome. That's super cool, guys. Congratulations. Any of the kids? Yeah.
Addie says her aunt is visiting.
Her aunt is visiting. Anyone else? Yeah.
Hannah's birthday
Is in how many days? 22 days, Hannah. Awesome. Yeah. What is it? Help us out. Yes. To some of you, that read as good news. To some of you who haven't planned anything yet, that's your low, is that that's coming up and you don't have anything on the table. But we are a community of people who connect together, who are able to talk about things. And so what we're going to do is over the next handful of weeks, we're going to talk about another one of our kind of 4 pillars. We talk about these things at the beginning of every service, that we are people who connect, we devote, we worship, and we serve. And it's not because these are magic words, or it's not because you can read a Bible passage in like Joel 6:8 and be like, thou shalt connect, worship, devote, and serve. But it's because these are the things that Christians do, and these are the things that Christians have always done. Like, this is just how we've always interacted. And so what's good is we're going to return to one of these in how we connect. And a couple weeks ago, we talked about kind of why we connect, and we're going to focus in the next few weeks before missions conference, and then actually the next few weeks after that on how we can actually connect. Because these 4 pillars, these 4 ways, these 4 things that we do are important because they remind us of the balance of our faith. Sometimes we can get so focused on one thing that we can miss out on another. And there's something about the balance in our faith that we both live our faith with God in our relationship with Him, but also with other people. And I don't know if you've noticed this about these 4 ways, that 2 of them are kind of focused on you with God, and 2 of them are kind of focused on you with other people, right? That we devote and we worship. And that's about your relationship with God, that you do that internal work to spend time with him and devote your heart to him, but also that you call out in joyous praise to worship him. And whether that's here in worship or like in the rest of your life, when just a good thing happens and you're able to take a moment in worship, that we devote and we worship. But also we live it out in our lives, that we connect and we serve. That with other people, there's also that balance between those two, of sometimes you are just enjoying the company of those around you. And sometimes you're serving them. You're using the things that you have to meet their needs. Sometimes you're sacrificing for them. And we live in a faith, and I don't know if you feel this, but a lot of times when I talk about my faith, it has to do with that balance. That I both worship and I connect. That I both serve and I devote. And those things, sometimes we can get too focused on one and miss out on another. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about connecting for the next handful of weeks. And as I mentioned, we talked, when you saw the word connect on the screen, does anyone remember we did a series in September on how we connect? And we talked about like that you are made in the image of a relational God. You are like at your very core, someone who is built to connect and relate to other people. And a lot of times in church we use the word relationship, but really what we're talking about here is friendships. Like you are made to be someone who is in relationships with other people. It's why your family and your friends bring so much meaning and value to your life. And we talked a little bit more about like why we connect. We connect because this world and you are broken. And there's something about in relationships that big things can get done, that the problems of this world and the problems of your life sometimes are bigger than bigger problems that you can handle. And we connect because when we join hands with other people, we can start to do something about it. There are lots of reasons why we connect, and so for the next handful of weeks, we're going to focus really specifically on why we connect. Practical ways that we can follow after Jesus, or on how we connect. Practical ways on how we can follow after Jesus to build connections and relationships and friendships, to grow good friendships. And we're going to focus in on a passage in Acts 2, verses 42 through 47. So if you want to open up, you're welcome to. Kids, it's on the back of your coloring page. And in bold is the younger kid memory part, and in not bold is the whole thing. So if you are an older kid, you would need to memorize that whole thing to get the prize. But if you're a younger kid, just the bold. And if you need help reading, you can ask one of the grown-ups or older kids back there to help you learn it. But we're going to spend some time in this passage in Acts 2. So if you had some time to open it up, here's what it says. It'll also be on the screen for us. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and to the breaking of bread and to prayer. And everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. And it says they sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. And every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts, and they broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. This is the word of the Lord. A lot of times in church we talk about relationships, but really a lot of what we're talking about here is friendships. We're talking about growing good friendships. And there is something about good friendships. We're not talking about making church friends or making work friends or making acquaintances. We're talking about making real friends. And there is something really wonderful about good friendships. And you see that they're doing, like this passage they're talking about in Acts, are just, some of them are just things that friends do. I love the phrase that you use, enjoying the favor of all the people. It's not something you do with your friend, you just like enjoy being around them. And there's something about us as Christians is we're people who connect like friends. We're people who are made to build and grow good friendships, who enjoy each other's company, who make plans that sometimes fall through because your kid is sick, who like play blocks together, who go and color together, who watch a show together, who meet up at concerts or at bowling alleys or around dining room tables. Like Christians are people who grow good friendships. That's at our core. When we follow God well, when we trust Jesus well, that's something that we do well. And frankly, this is not a message that most of our kids or students need. Like, something about growing older and getting older, sometimes this gets more difficult. Like, one of my kids was sitting at a table with another kid, and the other kid says, "Addie, we're friends now." And she goes, "Yep." I was like, that was easy. I don't know that as a grown-up I make friends quite that easily. Like, sometimes we're so wound up in all of the things that we have to do, all of the places we need to get to, and we miss out on the free time of just like enjoying the favor of all the people. A lot of times this is not a lesson that kids need, but it is a lesson that we need. That we need people who are growing good friendships And quite frankly, good friendships don't have agendas. Like, you make friends to enjoy being with your friends. We don't make friends to change them or to change ourselves. We don't make friends to convert someone or to make sure that we learn something or get something from them. Like, that's not friends, that's manipulation. When we make good friends, we make friends to enjoy them. Good friendships are something good in and of themselves, and they're not projects, and they're not resources. Maybe some of you made this mistake when you were trying to date someone in the past, and you told yourself that you could train them. That's not how relationships work. That's not how friendships work. Like, we make friends because we respect their thoughts. We enjoy their jokes. We appreciate their company. Like, can we all agree for a moment that beyond anything that you get from your friendships or you give in your friendships, good friendships are just a good thing in your life, aren't they? Yeah. And as we talk about this, my one little caveat is please don't hear us saying that you need to go and be a gregarious and outgoing person. Don't think that when we talk about friendships, that means that you need to be friendships like I build friendships. For some of you, you see me and you think living the way that I live seems exhausting. I have too much energy or I'm too out there. You don't need to be a friend like other people are a friend. If you like being gregarious and outgoing and making loud jokes and other people shush you, great, be that person, enjoy it. If you like to sit and read a book together and not talk, if you like to be in a small group, if you like to sit with just a friend and catch up over coffee, great, be that person, connect well. You don't need to make friends like you think other Christians do, but everyone benefits from building good friendships. And I don't know if it feels this way to you, but sometimes it feels unspiritual to talk about building good friendships. Like, that feels like that's an earthly thing. We don't need to talk about that in church. Let's just talk about prayer, not making friends. But if we're people who are following Jesus, we're following Christ-like patterns. And that's what the early church is doing. When they're talking about Acts, that's because they're following after Jesus. The patterns that they're following are Jesus patterns. The habits that they're building are Jesus habits. Like, very clearly, it's a Jesus-y habit we build when we're building good friendships. And as inane as it sounds to say Jesus-y habit, like, that is a deeply Christian thing. To build a Jesus-y habit is a very, very Christian thing. Like, we talk about being free from sin a lot, and part of that is being free from guilt, but part of that is also being free from those negative patterns that hurt you and hurt other people. That Jesus forgives those, but also he enables you to live better. Like, we talk about righteousness a lot, but righteousness is not just earning like enough good people points that God likes you more. Righteousness is that you don't have to do those things that hurt you and hurt other people anymore, but you can like live better following after God. That when the Spirit empowers you, when Christ forgives you, when God makes you new, you get to live in a better way. You get to build Jesus-y habits in your life because we trust that the way Jesus lives is the best way to live. And there is this like cosmic level of our faith that we can talk about sometimes. That it has to do with your relationship with God and your rightness before God and your justification before God. But that cosmic level is lived out very much on a down here level, isn't it? That when you are made right with God, we get to live different. We get to live out Jesus-y habits in our life that are better for you, and one of those is growing good friendships. Like, when you look at the passage in Acts, that's what they're doing. They're following Jesus to build Jesus-y habits in your life. If you look at the passage that's on its own, it says that they met together in temple courts and in their homes. And let's focus on it for that second passage. They ate together in their homes. Isn't that such a Jesus-y thing to do? Like, I know that a lot of times we organize our Christian friendships around, like, church or this table, but the way that Jesus did it was very much not a table like this where everyone gets a sip and a nibble, but was like around a table where you were friends together and you talked together. It is a very Jesus-y habit to sit together with other Christians and build good and deep friendships. This table that we talk about, that we're gonna come together later, I don't know if you recognize it, but when this thing is started, it happens while they were eating. The preamble to the thing that we read every week of breaking the bread and pouring out the cup is while they were eating, Jesus took the bread. They were already sitting together at the table connecting as friends. They were already spending time together because that is a very Jesus-y habit. He sat around tables and enjoyed friendships with other people who trusted God. Like there's this one time where he's sitting with a bunch of people and the apostles are like, hey, Jesus, your mom and brothers are here. They want to talk to you. I don't know if you know the story. And he's like, no. Those aren't my mom and brother. And I'm like, as someone who has a mom and brother, you can't say those things. But he's like, no, my mother and brother are anyone who trusts God too, who follows the will of God. We call each other in this room brother and sister, and sometimes those are just words, but there's a reason why we call each other brother and sister. It's because here in this room, we're family together. When we talk about this table in my house, what we say is that we are family together with Jesus. Because of what Jesus has done in your life, we get to be a family together with him. And some of that is something that happens immediately when you join a church. When you walk into a room, you gain a whole family, a whole room full of family. But some of it's also just something that grows over time, isn't it? Like when conversations in the hallway about the weather, or like catching up or shaking hands, or knowing that you probably should know that person's name, but you don't, and so you're just going to smile and call them Bud. When that turns into a real friendship where you're getting together, like there is this wonderful Jesus-y habit of making Christian friends. And I don't just mean church friends. Does the difference make sense to you, the difference between church friends and Christian friends? Church friends are people who you like smile with at church, but they don't come over your house. They don't really know your life. They don't carry things. Christian friends are different. Christian friends are the people who you can share things with. The people who you know if you were in the hospital, they would show up. The people who show up at your kids' basketball games. The people that when you stop being acquaintances and start joining a small group and you're able to talk about the things that are going on in your life and you know the things that are going on in their life, those are Christian friends. Those are the people that you get together with and you get to enjoy their company and be together with. Not just on a surfacey level, but on a deep level. And that is a very Jesus-y habit of building deep and meaningful Christian friends. Of being able to get together with other Christians and know that you can be yourself. Because when you're like that, when you're together with other people who trust God too, quite frankly, sometimes trusting God is hard, isn't it? But when you're together with other people who trust God too, you don't need to swim upstream anymore. You got other people who can support and encourage and grow your trust and your faith. And you get to enjoy their good friendships. But when you look at the story of Acts, making Christian friends is not the whole story. I don't know if you noticed this, but just before they met together in their homes with other Christians, they met together where? Does anyone remember? In the temple courts. Think about the temple courts for a second. The temple courts aren't the place where Christians get together. The temple courts are the place where people get together. The inner temple court is like the center for Jewish life, and the outer temple court is like the center for that town's life, that Israelite's life. Like, it's just the place where people gather. When you look at the life of these early Christians, they're not just building friendships with Christian people, with people who trust Jesus too. They're building friendships and relationships with people who don't trust Jesus, with people who aren't Christians. And that is such a Jesus-y habit too, isn't it? Like when you look at the life of Jesus, this dude keeps popping up with people who no one expects him to be with. Like there's a woman with a bad reputation who washes his feet with tears. Like when he's on the cross, he shows up next to like murderers or insurrectionists. He finds a short tax collector and is like, hey, dinner? Like this guy keeps showing up with people that you wouldn't expect him to be, so much so that when people are like rallying cries against Jesus because they don't like the way that he's shaking up life too much, they're like, this guy comes eating and drinking, he's a glutton and a drunkard and a friend of sinners. And those first two are twistings of what Jesus does. Like Jesus isn't a glutton and a drunkard. The third one though is a title that he wears proudly, isn't it? Like Jesus probably doesn't appreciate being called a glutton or a drunkard. He says, no, you don't get me. But when someone says you are a friend of sinners, I can imagine his response being like, you have said so. Like, yes, that is a title that I will carry proudly. And there's something so Jesus-y about building friends who don't trust Jesus too. About having relationships with people who don't trust Jesus also. And there's also something that can be so difficult about that when you're someone who's been a Christian for a long time. Isn't it? It feels like somewhere along the line, we switched from just having friends to making more Christian friends. We felt ourselves so worried about letting bad company corrupt good character, so worried about being polluted by the world, so worried about being of the world, that we forgot to still be in it. And somewhere along the way, maybe you've heard like a pastor or a preacher talk about witnessing to someone or sharing your faith with someone who's not a Christian, and you sat there in your chair and you thought, I don't know if I know anybody who's like that. I don't know if I have like a strong relationship with anyone who's not a Christian. And I don't say that to like get down on you. I find that to be one of the easiest things to do as a Christian, is to just build Christian friendships, just grow good Christian friendships. But you miss out on the Jesus-y habit of building non-Christian friendships, of growing relationships with people who don't trust Jesus, because those can be good relationships too. Somewhere along the way, I don't know if this is your story, but I think this feels like a lot of our stories, is you had a lot of friends who were non-Christians. And then maybe you became a Christian, and you became more serious about being a Christian. And you felt like you needed to join more small groups or more church groups. And those took up more of your time. And you came to the place where your real only friends were Christian friends. Your only community was Christian communities. And then a pastor or a preacher meddled too much in your life and said something like, hey, we need to be people who are witnessing too, who are sharing about our faith too. And you sat there thinking, I don't know anybody like that. Like if you're in a place, and this is something that I think our students and our kids struggle with, if you're in a place where you don't have any Christian friends, you just have church friends, then maybe the Jesus-y habit you need to grow is to like invite somebody out to lunch who's a part of the church. Maybe you need to take a step and share something about your life with someone. Maybe you need to write a birthday card or show up in someone's life. Maybe you need to build the habit of growing a Christian friend. But if you're in a place where I'm talking about having friends that don't trust Jesus too, and you're thinking, I don't know anybody like that, then maybe the Jesus-y habit that you need to grow is putting yourself in the temple courts. And I actually looked at a map of Centerville the other day. We don't have temple courts. We have basketball courts. We have Buddhist temples. We have schools. We have libraries. We have community centers. But maybe the Jesus-y habit that you need to build is like showing up on the basketball court and dunking on some fools. And building good friendships. There's really only one of us in this room who can do that. Building good friendships with people who don't trust Jesus too. Maybe what you need to do is like join a local book club at the library and make good friendships with people who don't trust Jesus too. Maybe what you need to do is you need to start up like a pinochle league for people in your area, so that you can sit together and build good friendships with people who don't necessarily trust Jesus, or maybe just don't trust him yet. And again, I want to point out that friendships don't start with agendas. We don't make non-Christian friends so that we can make them into Christian friends. We make non-Christian friends because we enjoy them. Because those people are made in the image of God too, who have loving and caring habits that would be nice to have a part of your life, who live down the street from you or in the same life pattern that you are, and you can share things with them because they have a hobby who's also your hobby, because they root for the sport team you root for, and it would be fun to be able to share that game together. We make non-Christian friends because we love people. We as Christians are to be people who are known by our love. And maybe that seems like a little semantic issue to you, of like we don't make non-Christian friends to witness to them or to make them into Christians. But if you talk to anyone who's ever felt like more like a project than a friend, then you know how big of a difference that is. If you talk to anyone who feels like they've been burnt by Christians because when they rejected Jesus, they found themselves rejected as friends, you know how big of a difference that is. We make friends because we love people, Christians or non-Christians alike. And one of the best parts about that is what we talked about for the last handful of weeks, is that when we are a good friend, when we are caring and kind and helpful, when we show up in people's lives in like big ways, but also in just like watching a sporting event, we give them the ability to think more highly of Jesus. Whether that's a Christian friend and we can help them trust by our perspective, or a non-Christian friend, and just by showing up in their life, we can help them see that not all Christians are going to reject them. We get to help people think more highly of Jesus. And that is such a great part of those relationships. But when that part becomes a whole, friends turn into projects. And nobody wants to be a project. Just like no one wants to be dated so that they could be trained into better ways. We're people who build Jesus-y habits to grow good friendships. That we get to be people. One of our kids turned this phrase the other week. Every week in kids' church, we teach the same lesson that we teach here in a different way, but then we ask questions because kids have great thoughts too. Sometimes the way that we need to connect is we need to listen to more of our kids and students because they have great ideas too. And I was like, hey, how should we treat our friends? And they're like, we treat our friends like family. And that's what's written on the kids' coloring page today. For those of you who can't read, in the back of the room it says, we treat friends like family. But that's what we do as Christians. With other Christians, with people who trust God and people who don't trust God alike, we treat friends like family. In a few minutes, that's the table that we come up to. This is our family table. And it's the table for the family of Christ, those people who are his brothers and sisters, the mothers and grandmothers, the aunts and uncles. But if you remember the first time, while they're eating, not everyone there is someone who trusts Jesus. Judas is eating at the table too. Judas is a friend too. Judas takes a nibble and a sip too. We are people who build the Jesus-y habit of growing good friendships. And as we come up to this table, and David invites us up to in a minute, it starts when we gather together as friends. Let's pray. Lord, I pray that you would help us to be good friends. That as we prepare our hearts and our minds to take communion together, that you would drive home the fact that we are a family. In your name we pray.